What up, though? In one of my recent shows, a commenter said, "You confused." And if that commenter is listening to this show, I just wanted to let him or her know that they absolutely right. I am confused. It's very confusing when your entire life, the people who are tasked with educating you, the external people, not the people who are supposed to educate slash nurture and nourish you, which is your parents, but the external people, school and such, propaganda, paper matter, articles, books, when all these people try to make you believe that you something that you ain't. Yeah, that's very confusing. And in peeling back the layers on this show, we go through the articles, whether recent or old, books, recent or old books. And what I come to find out is a lot of the authors of these articles and books, they confused too. But see, the commenter never said that the authors of the articles and books were confused. They just recognized my confusion. And that's why I do this. Because we gonna go through the confusion and we gonna pull out some truth. Let's shake it. Newspapers.com, the Star Independent, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania newspaper. The Star Independent, Thursday, September 20th, 1894. 1894, Thursday, September 20th. I ain't even know they had a newspaper in 1894 until probably within the past couple years. The Star Independent, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Riotous Negro Indians. Well, we know there's no such thing as a Negro or a black, but we do know the people from this soil portion that we term as America were and are often referred to as American Indians, which is a broad label, because I know just like you do, your people come from somewhere, whether it's Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Texas, no matter where they come from, New York, Ohio, no matter where they come from, California, they come from a place within that soil portion. They called that place something, just like they called themselves something. And guess what? They called you something. Whatever your name is. Riotous Negro Indians. Chief Blue in open rebellion against Chickasaw Nation authorities. Wichita, Kansas, September. A special from Stonewall in the Chickasaw Nation is to effect that Chief Blue, the leader of the Chickasaw Negro Indians, is in open rebellion, or properly Chickasaw Indians, or properly Indians. Chief Blue is in open rebellion. The insurrectionists have gone out on a marauding tour and are terrorizing the Indian citizens, and especially the squaw men, who were essentially Anglo-Saxons or what have you, that were with Indian women. Last Sunday, the band headed by King Blue, he was Chief Blue, now they calling him King Blue, and his Negroes. First he was a Negro Indian, now he's a Negro. See how much they change up? See how they change you up with a keyboard? And like I was saying earlier, the commenter said that I'm confused. Now, if this ain't confusing, I don't know what is. Chief Blue, King Blue, Negro Indian, Chickasaw, Indian citizens is who they terrorizing. King Blue and his Negroes swept down on the farm of George H. Truall, postmaster at Stonewall at midday. Truall, a white man, now they called him a squaw man, okay? He's a white man, and his squaw were led from the house and bound with ropes and held prisoners. King Blue and his band then destroyed everything in the house. They could not eat and drink, and rode off howling and screeching. Talking greasy. Neighbors found Truall and his wife and released them. Other Indian citizens, other Indian citizens have been similarly treated, and the eastern part of the Chickasaw Nation is in a state of terror. This is from Fort Scott Tribune and the Fort Scott Monitor newspaper, Fort Scott, Kansas, Saturday, August 3rd, 1895. Saturday, April 3rd, 1895. Fort Scott Tribune and the Fort Scott Monitor newspaper, Fort Scott, Kansas. Now the new Negro. Atlanta's show. Remember, we were just talking about 1894, right? Let's go check it out. 1894, September 20th. This is in Pennsylvania. This is a Pennsylvania newspaper reporting this story from Wichita, Kansas, 1894. Now we go to Fort Scott Tribune and the Fort Scott Monitor, Fort Scott, Kansas newspaper, 1895, okay? Remember, Chief Blue, the Chickasaw Negro Indian, okay? The chief of the Chickasaw Negro Indians, now the new Negro. Atlanta's show will mark a new era in the racist progress. It's a lot of things happening here in America, okay? Display illustrative of the black man's development since the war. Now it's a black man. At the beginning, it was Negro. Now it's a black man. The chief organizer, the word chief again, organizer, where did that come from? Where did the use of that word come from? We putting it together here. The chief organizer, a brainy and representative man, features of the exhibit. Perhaps it has not yet occurred to Americans that the most significant event in the history of the colored race, now it's colored, of the colored race since slavery was abolished will occur this year. And when perhaps it has not yet occurred to Americans. And when they're referring to Americans, remember, this is 1895. So in 1828, Webster's American Dictionary of the English Language, Noah Webster tells us that the word America is now applied to the Europeans, the descendants of Europeans. That's in 1828, and he said it's now applied. So even in 1828, people were referring to the descendants of Europeans as Americans, although we know Chief Blue was the only American it ever was, is, and will be. Perhaps it has not yet occurred to Americans that the most significant event in the history of the colored race, since slavery was abolished will occur this year. This is 1895. It is said that slavery was abolished in the early 1800s. So this is what's happening. This is what's happening in 1895. The ambitions and hearty effort of the entire race to collect at Atlanta a display illustrative of every phase of their progress since the war, and which will give the Negro a higher place in civilization than he has ever occupied before, has already produced results that will have a lasting influence upon their future, the future of the Negro, or the black, or the colored, or the Indian, or the American, the only American it ever was, is, and will be. It is the opportunity of the new Negro. It is significant that the historical movement has been placed in the hands of a brainy and capable representative of the younger generation of Negroes, a well-educated, broad-minded, and progressive young man who sees in the work which he is carrying on grand possibilities for the development of his people. He believes in the Negro and believes that the display that will be made in the Negro Building at the Atlanta Exposition this fall will mark a new era in the race's progress. The brightest indication of the success of the movement is found in the spontaneous enthusiasm with which the suggestion that there be a Negro building at the exposition was met. This enthusiasm has grown with the growth of the movement, and now the effort to make it representative of all the advancement made by the race has spread into every state in the South and has reached Africa. The Negro building built by Negro workmen, and it said it reached Africa, spread into every state in the South. And in 1895, you have to know what is considered the South. So homework. And has reached Africa. Now, why they're saying it reached Africa? Why they couldn't say it has reached Uzbekistan, Iran, Panama. Why they didn't say it reached Slovakia, Ukraine? Why did they say the race has spread into every state? Advancement made by the race, it says, made it representative of all the advancement made by the race, has spread into every state in the South and has reached Africa. The advancements have reached every state in the South and has reached Africa. Well, we know, if you watch my last show, we went over some of the inventions made by your ancestors. The Americans, the American Indians, falsely called Negro, blacks, colored. We know that a lot of these inventions were in around the time 1895, the time of this publication. And it says they have reached the advancements of your people have reached every state in the South and has reached Africa. The Negro building, built by Negro workmen and designed by a Negro architect, is completed, and the work of collecting the interesting exhibit has almost been completed. I. Garland Penn, a young Negro under 27 years of age, is chief of the building. Homie is chief of the building. He was called from a prominent place in the public schools of Lynchburg, Virginia, to take up the work. He represents the best that is in the race. He is energetic, purposeful, enthusiastic, and capable. He came to Atlanta and set the wheels in motion, and now it is not too much to say that the building over which he presides will contain what will prove to be the most interesting exhibit of the entire exposition. The general character of the exhibit will be educational. There will be complete industrial exhibits from at least 50 industrial schools for colored people, your ancestors. The exhibits from these schools will cover every branch of industrial work. One great good that has already been accomplished is the stimulation to literary effort among the Negroes. Over 200 books by Negro authors will be on exhibition. Over 200 books by Negro authors will be on exhibition in 1895. Over 100 of these are being written especially for the exposition. So they writing books especially for the exposition. Among the books will be a work on electric lighting, another on architectural drawing, and a Greek textbook. This serves to show a tendency among the race. The art display will perhaps be most surprising. There will be many creditable paintings and pieces of sculpture work from Negro artists. There will be a painting from the original Christ before Pilate, the work of a young Negro. Miss Edmonia Lewis, a young artist who has gone to Italy to study, has executed a splendid bust of Charles Sumner for the exhibit. Miss Edmonia Lewis, a young artist who has gone to Italy to study. This is 1895, which means she was in Italy before 1895. So she was studying in Italy before 1895. I don't know exactly when. An Atlanta artist, Professor W.O. Jacks, will have a creditable collection of paintings. The inventive genius of the Negro will be well illustrated. Congressman Murray, the only colored man in the last Congress. So we have one of your people in Congress, a colored man, falsely called colored. He is an American, probably an American Indian. Well, we know that when they say colored, black, Negro, they mean the people, the original people of this soil portion that we call America, from the top of Canada to the bottom of Argentina and all the islands. You can get as specific as you want to, depending on how deep you have went into your family's story. Congressman Murray, the only colored man in the last Congress, will exhibit 25 models of agricultural implements. A number of electrical inventions by Negroes will also be shown. An engine built by the students of the Hampton School will be displayed. And a complete engine built by a young Negro of Marietta, Georgia, will be shown. Marietta, Georgia. The Negro's love for music will be prominent in the exhibit. Scores of marches, quick-step songs, and plantation airs have already been composed and printed by the Negroes and will be in evidence in the Negro Building. Negro Building, properly American Indian Building. The only American there ever was, is, and will be. Let's shake it. there will be a series of highly important Negro Congresses held in the building during the exposition. The best thought in the race will be represented. From November 12th to 15th, the Colored Religions Congress will be held. All the churches in which the colored race is represented have been invited to attend. On November 16th, the Farmers and Businessmen's Congress will occur. November 17th, the Congress of Professional Colored Men will be held. November 19th and 20th, the Congress of Colored Temperance Advocates will convene. During the Christmas holidays, a series of educational congresses will be held. Robert Adamson in Chicago, Times Herald. We were just speaking of 1895, the exhibition in Atlanta, Georgia. The Wall Street Journal newspaper, New York, New York. The Wall Street Journal newspaper, New York, New York. Wednesday, July 20th, 1904. 1904. The Negro problem. See, now the nigga is a problem. That quick, you hear me? There are more Negroes in America than in any other continent except Africa. There are more Negroes in America than in any other continent except Africa. By this statement, they are associating people who look a certain way as Negroes. There are more Negroes in America. And when they say America than in any other continent, they're speaking of the continent, not the U.S. They're speaking of from the top of Canada to the bottom of Argentina. There are more Negroes in America than in any other continent except Africa. So by Negro, they're talking about appearance. They're talking about features, facial features and things of this nature. They're talking about people who look and are different than they are. People who are not Anglo-Saxon, people who are not Caucasian, or as I call them, old peoples. There are more Negroes in America than in any other continent except Africa. So there are more people who are not, quote, white, end quote, in America than in any other continent except Africa. Hence, the Negro problem, which has been a cause of division, strife, and disturbance in this country for upwards of a century. It was the Negro problem that produced all the bitterness and excitement of the anti-slavery agitation. It was the Negro problem that cost this country 4 years of civil war, involving the loss of thousands of lives and billions of dollars of wealth. It was the Negro problem that caused the abuses and contentions of the Reconstruction period. The Negro problem is still with us. You hear me? Is still with us today. We still a problem. It will probably be years before it will be solved. Racial differences are not easily removed. So how do you remove racial differences if they are innate, if they are natural differences of people? See, what they're talking about is complexion, features, attitude. They are born in the blood. The South, where most of the blacks live, where most of the American Indians live, insists upon white supremacy and has adopted measures to secure it. The South, where most of the blacks live, insists upon white supremacy and has adopted measures to secure it. Some of these measures meet with criticism in the North, and thus there is continued contention. There are several different points of view from which this problem is approached. The two extremes are the point of view of those who regard the Negroes as constitutionally an inferior race that can never rise far above their present capacities and must be kept under control and confined substantially to employment as domestics and agricultural laborers. Now, remember, we're speaking about this right now, 1904, but just remember, in 1895, it was a completely different story when speaking about the Negro Exposition that was being held in Atlanta. Rewind. So which one is it? Are Negroes to be kept under control and confined substantially to employment as domestics and agricultural laborers? Well, I think this is where the contention occurs. This is where jealousy occurs. The point of view of those who would exploit the Negro problem for political purposes and to use the Negro as a voter for partisan advantage. The first point of view prevails mostly in the South and the second mostly in the North. Between these two extremes are many other opinions regarding this problem. I think the Negro problem is only considered a problem because of the same reason the Negro problem persists today. Foreigners come here to our house. Use our facilities. Sit in the living room. Go on the refrigerator when they want to. Use our shower. But they don't want to live next to us. Again, they come to our house and don't want to live next to us. They go to our schools and don't want to learn next to us. They set up patent offices and don't want to give the credit or the financial compensation to your family members that invented the things that fill the patent office database. Some hold that the Negroes are the equals of the whites. Oh no, we not equal. We not the same. We are not the same as a white. And we not a black. Or need only years of education to become so. Yeah, we do need education in order to, if you are educating, nurturing, nourishing your child to be equal to a white, then of course they will become that. Many of us have, in a sense. And therefore, they favor throwing open to them every door of opportunity and equality. Others believe that while the Negro is not now and may possibly never become the equal of the white, yet it is only fair Others believe that while the Negro is not now and may possibly never become the equal of the white, yet it is only fair that he should have every possible facility for development. Now, they're speaking of facility for development in 1904, but think about the Atlanta Exposition in 1895 newspaper, right? I don't think niggas need no handouts. What you think? I think we had it pretty much together from the beginning and before. He should have every possible facility for development. That it is not fair to keep him down practically to one pursuit and one branch of agriculture, and that there is advantage to him and to the country at large in encouraging him to obtain an education fitting him for various industrial pursuits, and by thrift and economy for obtaining an independent property. It is not our purpose to enter into any discussion of this problem from any of these points of view. It is a painful and difficult subject and full of serious concern and possible peril to the country. Least of all, is it our intention to consider the latest phase of this problem, that which will be an issue in the campaign of this year. The question whether states where Negroes, or properly American Indians, are prevented from voting by various provisions of law, such as educational qualifications and the like, should be deprived of representation in Congress and the Electoral College in proportion to the Negro vote thus suppressed. There is another point of view from which we would briefly approach this subject, and we are enabled to approach it by the help of the recent bulletin of the Bureau of the Census relating to Negroes in the United States, not America, Negroes in the United States. There were in 1900, according to the census, 9,204,531 Negroes in this country. And when they say this country, they are speaking of the United States, not America as a whole. Nearly 9/10 of them living in the southern states, with a special concentration in Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama, where a lot of your people from. I know a lot of my people from those places. Thus, the Negro problem is first a Southern problem, though in a large sense, it becomes a national problem. There are 55 countries in which 3/4 of the population is black. More than 3/4 of the Negroes live outside of the cities. In the South, Negroes constitute the 1/3 of the population. And understand what they mean when they say Negroes. They are speaking of people with a particular complexion and particular features as well as attitude. Negroes are workers. Nearly 4 million, or over 45% of them, are breadwinners, and as compared with 37% among whites. There are 27 different occupations in which at least 10,000 Negroes are engaged, but 2/3 of the race are engaged in agriculture. The Negro bears an important relation to the cotton crop. The death rate in 1900 was 30.2, while that of whites in the area was 17.3. Showing the differences in conditions of life. Nevertheless, the number of Negroes has increased during the past 20 years, 2,253,000, or 32.2%, and they are speaking of the United States, not America as a whole. The percentage of growth among whites has been larger in the same time, but part of this is due to immigration. Of course, they are constantly landing on our shores, even today, because this is the only way that they can sustain the numbers that they are, which the numbers that they give you are false. But these numbers, they can't maintain any substantial numbers on this soil portion we call America if they weren't landing on our shores on a daily basis. And they even got some of y'all going to mommy Africa, thinking that's where your people came from. You didn't look. You didn't try to find out where your people came from. You assumed because of the propaganda and the coercion that that was the place of your people's origins. Sometimes y'all get a rude awakening. The percentage of growth among whites has been larger in the same time, but part of this is due to immigration. It is an interesting fact. The two races are in a way coming together. See how they do it? Two races. Are you a part of that two race thing? How easy is it? How easy is it to get you to think that you are part of a two race thing? You know, like the two political race thing. Why you can't be a part of the third race? Why is that so hard to be a part of the fourth race or the 20th race? Why you got to be a part of the two races? The game are in a way coming together. That is to say, there is an increasing commingling of their blood. This is shown by the estimate that the proportion of mulattoes was 12% in 1870 and 15.2% in 1890. Now, this propaganda tool, this newspaper, which has never ceased to be a propaganda tool, even to recent times. This is shown by the estimate that the proportion of mulattoes was 12% in 1870 and 15.2% in 1890. They would have you believe that the commingling of blood between the two races, you know, black and white, the two theoretical races that don't really exist, no such thing as a black human or a white human. They would have you believe that the commingling of these two races produces what they call as a mulatto. Well, and they said 12% in 1870 and 15.2% in 1890. Well, I have relatives, quite a few, who were in the category of color. They were termed as mulattoes in 1870 census and 1880 census. And they mentioned here 1890 census, but we don't have records of that because the records burned for some reason. So 12% in 1870. So a bunch of my family members were considered mulattoes. And then guess what? That color designation changed and they all became black. They all became Negro at some point. Even in a rare case, even in a pretty rare case, one or two of them became African American. One or two of them became white. These are the games they play. And to the commenter that I spoke about, the commenter of one of my recent shows that I spoke about in the beginning of this show, who said that I'm confused. Now you see why. If the statistics on which this estimate is based are reliable, it is only a question of time when the Negro problem may be solved in this way. And then they call us Negro. See what I mean? But at best, the wiping out of the full-blooded Negro. Now, what's a full-blooded Negro? Remember when they said that the American South, there is no other place except for they said in America. They said there is no other place than America except Africa that has more Negroes. And I told you, Negro was synonymous with complexion and features and attitude. But more than that, anyone who is not considered white or Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian of something of that nature, I'm still sort of confused about that as well. But at best, the wiping out of the full-blooded Negro through commingling of the races must be a process of very many years, which will never happen. The present intellectual standing of the Negro is indicated by the fact that 44.5% of their number above 10 years of age are illiterate, although this is a marked improvement as compared with 1890 when the percentage was 57.1. There are 2,600,000 Negroes engaged in various capacities in agriculture, and there are 685,000 employed as domestics. It is of interest to note that 21,267 have become teachers, a gain of 6,000 in 10 years. There are also 15,528 clergymen, a gain of 3,000, of over 3,000. The number of Negro teachers and clergymen is increasing more rapidly than among the whites. There are 55,327 railroad employees, 33,266 sawmill workers, 21,113 carpenters, 14,386 masons, 12,327 iron and steel workers. It is significant that 746,717 farms are operated by Negroes in 1904. The output of which was in 1899 $255,751,145. Negro farmers produce almost 2/5 of all the cotton raised in the United States. And some people who look like us, they got a problem with a nigger picking cotton. Well, if you responsible for producing 2/5 of all the cotton raised in the United States, who gonna pick it? Who gonna pick it? And then it say these figures do not solve the Negro problem, right? Because the Negro's still around. The American Indian is still around. That's the problem, that we around. They want us to pack our bags and go. They made you think they made you think that you packed your bags a little bit and left. You know what I mean? The Trail of Tears, they made you think you packed a few people packed their bags and left. Well, a lot of people ain't go nowhere and still ain't went nowhere. Omaha World Herald, Omaha, Nebraska, Saturday, November 18th, 1911. We just went from 1904, then we were talking about 1895. We started off with Chief Blue, who they called the Chickasaw Negro Indian Chief or King in 1894. Omaha West Herald newspaper, Omaha, Nebraska, Saturday, November 18th, 1911. Negro population of the South. During the past decade, according to the census figure, the Negro population has increased slowly, and they are moving to the towns and cities as fast as they can. In the rural districts of the South, the increase of population was only 8.3% for the Negroes. And by Negro, we mean American Indian or American, the only American there ever was, is, and will be. We have to continue to clear that up. As against 17.5% for the previous decade, and as against 17.3% for the whites. In other words, the white population is increasing twice as fast as the Negro population in the country districts. Of course, they're being shipped here in waves every year. This was not, what does it say? This was not unexpected. If the census of 1890, I believe, had covered the question on the admixture of the races as the enumerations in antebellum times did, it would have brought to light a remarkable ethnological fact, namely that the Southern Negro is getting blacker in spite of the mixture of blood, and that there is rapidly being formed a homogeneous Negroid race. So they said the Southern Negro is getting blacker in spite of him messing with Anglo-Saxons. And we know that your ancestors wasn't just running around here mating with everybody who came into this country. These people, they like to romanticize things, you know. I've said it once and I say it again. Ain't no foreigner ever moved to your block and all of a sudden the females just start mating with them. Come on, man. That sounds stupid. Former censuses divided the Negroes. 1911 is where we at right now. 1911, Omaha World Herald newspaper, Omaha, Nebraska's has this article, and I'm pretty sure a bunch of other newspapers carrying this article as well. It's 1911. Former censuses divided the Negroes into octoroons, quadroons, mulattoes, and blacks. Well, that census, which divided Negroes into octoroons, quadroons, and such, was the 1890 census, which we are not able to access. Later, these distinctions were dropped and the classification of colored, that is, those of mixed race and Negroes, was substituted. Well, that's also false, because one of my great grandmothers, on her birth record, it was said to be that she was colored, and this says that colored, that is, those of mixed race and Negroes. So they're saying that one of my great grandmothers, she was labeled colored, that she was of mixed race and Negroes. Well, both of her parents were considered Negroes or blacks. So that's false. Finally, all Negroes, whether full black or not. Full black. What's a full black? What's a full black? Because if I take a marker right now and go over one of these lines, I blacked out that line. It don't exist no more. You can't read it no more. So what human being is black? None. Finally, all Negroes, whether full black, Negro, full black, they synonymous. Negroes synonymous. It say finally all Negroes, whether full black or not. So a Negro now, you can be half black and be a Negro. You can be, you don't have to be full black to be a Negro right here. Again. All confusing stuff. Very confusing. That's why we need to go over it. We need to find the truth in the confusion. Because this propaganda, just like other propaganda, articles, books, they shape the perception we have of the world as well as of ourselves and of others. Whether full black or not, finally all Negroes, whether full black or not, were enumerated as colored. Because of this classification, the census figures do not reflect the changes now going on among the Negroes as a race. Now, what changes are going on with Negroes as a race? Let's see if if they gonna properly speak for Negroes as a race. And I'm pretty sure none of my people ever agreed to be called a race. And definitely they never agreed to be called a Negro. Louisiana is whitening very fast. It has a Negro majority in slavery days. It had a Negro majority in slavery days, and for 30 years afterwards. And this was the case with New Orleans until 1850, it being the only large American city at that time with more Negroes than whites. The census of 1900 showed a white majority of 75,000. That of 1910 will show a white majority of 150,000. The whites have been gaining on the Negroes. This is what they mean when they say race. It's a race. The whites have been gaining on the Negroes. The whites is coming in. They starting to gain on the Negroes. Everything's starting to be white. Everything's starting to turn to be white. The whites have been gaining on the Negroes. They almost neck and neck. Who gonna win? Slightly through immigration and mainly through natural increase. Slightly through immigration. No, largely through immigration and mainly through natural increase. Smallly, not as much, rarely through natural increase, especially of the French-speaking population. Of the 28 parishes of South Louisiana, in which the people of French origin are numerous, and a majority had more Negroes than whites when emancipation came. Today, all but 5 of them have white majorities, and these majorities are steadily increasing. There is some drift in the same direction in the northern part of the state, but there it is due largely to the Negro exodus to Oklahoma. So there was a large Negro exodus to Oklahoma, Arkansas, and other states caused by the invasion of the boll weevil. What's a boll weevil? Is that an animal? Are they now calling the United States government boll weevils? Listen, honestly, no jokes. There is some drift in the same direction in the northern part of the state. We're talking Louisiana. But there it is due largely to the Negro exodus to Oklahoma. But this change is a minor matter compared with the tendency of the Negroes to become a more homogeneous race, different from what they were in Africa or from what they were in the South in antebellum days. You see how they keep connecting you to Africa? They have to keep the lie alive. Africa has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, but they throw Africa in there always. This is a concerted effort because it's still happening today. Look how they're remaking these movies, these Roots and all these movies today, making them mini series, making them series and whatnot. Look at how they doing this, and they using people from the place we term as Africa who have real African ancestry. They using those people. To this day, they got to keep the lie alive. The type is markedly different, and the difference is most apparent in southern Louisiana and especially in New Orleans, where the conditions have been such to develop this type. Not all the same tribe. Only in Louisiana was it first recognized that the Negro slaves imported into the country were not all of the same tribe or race. As a matter of fact, the slaves were of different tribes and different in language, form, and even color. There were yellow, black, and bronze Negroes. See, it's all about complexion with these people because you got yellow, dark brown, and bronze Negroes or American Indians in your family. Even some Gallus and other mixed of an Arab type. Now they mixing you with Arab. Others were straight-haired Negroes. And not a few persons of dark-skinned races were smuggled in among the Negroes proper. All the earlier Louisiana records classified the Negroes according to their tribes, and up to the extinction of slavery, the Louisiana title deeds continued to specify the kind of Negro sold. He was a Negro Nard, or of the Nard Nation, a Senegal Negro, a Congo Negro, a Mandinga Negro, a Congo Negro, a Mandinga Negro, etc. Told you. Since the abolition of slavery, all these tribes and races, let's move on. All these tribes and races have so intermarried that the race became in time composite, including all the black tribes of Central and Southern Africa, with probably a dash, not too much, not too much. We don't want it to be too salty. A dash of Arab blood, then followed with a mixture with American Indians. See how that do? They put a mixture with American Indians. They don't never want to they don't ever want to call you who you really is. No, because that means that you have a connection to this soil, that you are the original inhabitants of this soil. So what they do, they stir you in a plot. They stir you in a pot, and they say within you includes all the black tribes of Central and Southern Africa, whatever those tribes is. Congo, Mandinka. And then they say they give you a dash of Arab. Then followed a mixture with American Indians, as Negro ethnology has never received much consideration, although the Smithsonian Institution has issued dozens of volumes on Indian ethnology. There is nothing to show what proportion of Indian blood was swallowed up in the more numerous Negroes. The old French and Spanish censuses of Louisiana show a very large number of Indian slaves who lived in the same quarters as Negroes. But that's because it ain't no such thing as a Negro. They was all American Indians, and who disappeared by the force of amalgamation, by mating, right? Because it was a nigga just mate with people. The Indians numbered nearly 1/5 of the slaves. The disappearance of these tribes is not so much due to their extinction as to the fact that they were swallowed up in the large number of the Negroes, and that intermarriage gradually converted them into Negroes. When the Dawes Commission visited Louisiana and Mississippi some years ago to arrange for the division of the Indian lands, mainly the Choctaw lands in Oklahoma, and to see what a proper share was awarded those Indians who remained behind when the rest of the tribe moved under the Dancing Rabbit Treaty to Indian Territory, some 40,000 Negroes put in claims as descendants of the Choctaws. The commission was puzzled at the appearance of these black Indians. Now they're black Indians. See how they do? And see why this is so confusing? But it don't have to be confusing, because it's lies upon lies upon lies and deception. These are disgusting people. Disgusting. Survivalists. They just want to survive. They want your stuff. And over the years, they've been getting it. You've been giving it to them a lot. You invent it. They steal it. They sell it to other people to sell to you. You buy it. But their claims were finally disposed of by the fact that it was impossible for them to prove the marriage of their parents and to comply with the requirements of the law in other respects. In Western Louisiana, there has always been serious trouble with the people known as the Red Bone, who claim to be Indians and who undoubtedly have Indian blood, but in whom the Negro features and characteristics are much more pronounced than the Indian. Here we go. Oh, man. We into this right now. Come on. Ain't nobody called no red bone except them sisters from your neighborhood and mine. Come on, man. Come on. In Western Louisiana, there's always this yellow bone too now. Come on, man. Come on, man. Stop it. I told you. I told you. Within the confusion, there is truth. In Western Louisiana, there has always been serious trouble with the people known as the Red Bone, who claim to be Indians and who undoubtedly have Indian blood, because they are Indians, but in whom the Negro features and characteristics, I told you, when these people say Negro, they're speaking of complexion, features, attitude, countenance. Okay? You know how they say angry black woman? That's what they mean. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. It ain't it's not as deep as you think, and these people not as smart as you think. They're really not. Okay? Because to me, these are very simple manipulations. In Western Louisiana, there has always been serious trouble with the people known as the Red Bone. Come on, Red Bone. Where you at? You in the comments? Who claim to be Indians and who undoubtedly have Indian blood. Undoubtedly have Indian blood. So they saying the Red Bone undoubtedly has Indian blood, but in whom the Negro features and characteristics are much more pronounced than the Indian, than the fake Indian, than the Party City costume Indian, the media Indian. Okay, they saying who undoubtedly the Red Bone has Indian blood, just like you, undoubtedly. But in whom the Negro features just like you in characteristics, angry black woman, angry black man, violent black man, are much more pronounced than the Indian, much more pronounced than the Tonto Indian. It can be stated with safety that there is in Louisiana and Mississippi a considerable mixture or Indian blood with the composite African, taking him away from any of the original type and making him an Indo-African. First time I heard that, Indo-African. Now you are Indo-African now. Listen, today you are African-American. Indo-African. Switch it around, African-American. Same thing. Mixed with whites. Or does that say mixed with whites or mied with whites? Finally came the mixture with the whites, which be Bo, which a New Orleans man, which be Bo, a New Orleans man attempted, which Debo, a New Orleans man attempted to bring out when he was superintendent of the census. In the census just before the Civil War and again in 1870, an attempt was made to enumerate the octoroons. 1870, an attempt was made to enumerate the octoroons, quadroons, mulattoes, and Negroes separately. 1890 was said, the 1890 census was said to include those designations, octoroon, quadroons, and mulattoes. And I think it was burned. They said it was burned. The stuff, all information was burned. So we don't got the information, but somebody do. Come on, man. But it's not important. We know all this confusion, lies, manipulation, disgusting, all this stuff. We know this stuff is happening. You don't have to give us all of it. We ain't dumb. We understand. We from the soil. We from the land. We got a connection that you don't got. So in 1890, when the octoroons and quadroons were enumerated as such, see, that was a little too much truth. Because in order to say you had 1/8 or 1/4, they were saying that you were that thing. So I had to hurry up and get that off there. We had to get that off there because we don't even want you to know that you're that thing. You're that person. You're that engine. It is it, but come on, man. It is admitted that the work was not thoroughly done, for the Negro himself rarely has any knowledge of his ancestry. And the test of color, while generally good, is not always accurate. But even making allowance for errors, the facts given were of importance as showing the intermixture of races. I have to be honest, the people who write these newspaper articles, this is 1911. The person who is responsible for this article, I wish we had the author's name. Hopefully they'll say it at the end. These people they put us on. They put us on. But even making allowances for errors, the facts given were of importance as showing the intermixture of races. The mixture was confessedly greatest in Louisiana and particularly in New Orleans. The last enumeration showed that the Negro and colored population of New Orleans, see, Negro and colored. Why did they have to put an and between those and separate those two terms when they use them interchangeably in other articles and possibly at the beginning of this article? Negro and colored. And I would have to say that both of these words, all they're referring to are complexions and features. And whether or not they think they look, whether or not the old peoples or the Anglo-Saxons or the people who are termed white finds them favorable, I think that these terms are applied based on if the so-called white person finds these people favorable or not. The last enumeration showed that the Negro and colored population of New Orleans was about 2/5 white and 3/5 Negro. So they or not quite the proportions of an average mulatto. See how confusing this is? Nowhere in the country, for that matter, nowhere in the world, were there more octoroons and quadroons. And where is their sources for this? Nowhere in the country or nowhere in the world were there more octoroons and quadroons. Where's the proof? And where else were they talking about octoroon and quadroon, persons in whom the white blood predominated, who would have been called white in Latin America, but whom the Americans classified and treated as Negroes? And by American at this particular juncture in the article, they are speaking of people who are termed white. Through the mixture of the different African tribes with just a dash, not too much. You don't want to be too salty. With a dash of Indian and white blood. See how they keep the African in there and they say African tribes. Why wouldn't they specify which tribes each time? Well, I'll answer that because they're not specifying who your people are. They're saying Indian. And then they're saying white. It tells us nothing. This is where the confusion comes because they're using blanket statements to describe millions of people who all have their own individual stories. And also because of the better treatment they received, the Negroes had changed when in slavery to a better, stronger, and higher type. Slavery perhaps had most to do with this change. To the slave owners, particularly those breeding slaves for the southern market, it was important, indeed necessary, to take good care of the Negroes, just as this is necessary with horses and cattle. Care was taken also to see that healthy young women did not mate with weak, delicate, undersized, or old men. The consequence was an improvement in the race. The same reason induced the planters to take good care of their hands and feed them well on solid and substantial food, not luxuries. So now they're saying that they fed them well, and they made sure they fed them well. They made sure the women didn't mate with weak men. Now they're controlling who the women mess with. They're controlling the food, but yet today they don't season their food. They don't put a little dash of salt. They don't put a little bell pepper and a little onion and all that good kind of stuff. Little pepper, what have you. What they put, a dash of Arab and a dash of this and a dash of that. A dash of Congo, a dash of Africa. That's all they can do. That's the only way they season shit. The same reason induced the planter to take good care of their hands and feed them well on solid and substantial food, not luxuries. We feed the people. We feed the world. Don't nobody got food like us. Don't nobody do the food like us. Period, point blank. You know that. Stop it. The Negro race added from 2 to 3 inches to its height. The Negro race added from 2 to 3 inches to its height. So a whole entire race added some inches to its height. So now every nigga is tall. This is stupid. That's why I say you think these people are the most intelligent people in the world, and they're not. Just like it's somebody maybe a family member, maybe a friend, who you thought was smarter than they are, and they think they're smarter than they are, but they're not. They're really not. They're really not. See, these people aren't smart. They're not intelligent. This proves it. The Negro race added from 2 to 3 inches to its height. This is stupid. This is dumb. I'm being dumbed down right now. And an average of 20 pounds to the weight of the full-grown man or woman during slavery. Whatever the wrongs of the Negro may have been in the opinion of persons who have studied the matter, it is safe to say that perhaps no race was in better physical condition when emancipation came, and none had made greater progress physically from the day Negroes were imported from Africa. What day was that? That the Negro was imported from Africa? 1619? Come on, man. Come on. Give us some specifics, because this is stupid. The white and Indian blood. Perhaps the white and Indian blood, perhaps the mode of living, minimized the features of the Negro, and he improved in looks. And by 1870, this blood mixture had affected the entire Negro population of the country and made all us niggas beautiful, right? We all pretty. Right? They said, listen to how they speak. The white and Indian blood, perhaps the mode of living. Now, this is, listen. It says, after emancipation came, it is safe to say that perhaps no race was in better physical condition when emancipation came. And none had made greater progress physically from the day Negroes were imported from Africa. You know, when 1 trillion Negroes was packed like sardines in the bottom of the sailboat, kidnapped 3, 4, 5 trips a year, taking the same amount of people. The people saw them at the shore. They saw them coming at the shore. And yet they continued. Let's not even get into that. Let's just, needless to say, they was weak when they got here, right? But perhaps no other race was in better physical condition when emancipation came. And none had made greater progress physically from the day Negroes were imported from Africa. Now listen, this is huge for us, y'all. The white and Indian blood, perhaps the mode of living since emancipation, 30, 40 years, right? Minimize the features of the Negro, minimize the nose, minimize the lips. Because all of us got the same nose and lips, right? Everybody in your family got the same nose and lips. Everybody, the people next door to me right now, the niggas who live next door to me right now, upstairs, downstairs, across the hall, they all got the same nose and lips as me, right? And it say the white and Indian blood, perhaps the mode of living, minimize the features of the Negro. But if with the white blood, wouldn't our ears be real big? I'm just saying, man. Listen. Features of the Negro, and he improved in looks, and by 1870 this blood mixture had affected the entire Negro population of the country. So now we all beautiful, right? That's precious, right? J. Stahl Patterson, one of the few persons who had made a study of Negro ethnology, insists that the white blood among the Negroes has been so well distributed, because Negroes have been mating with white people for so long, right? That the white blood, J. Stahl Patterson, one of the few persons who have made a study of Negro ethnology, insists that the white blood among the Negroes has been so well distributed that there is scarcely a Negro of pure African blood in the country. Whoa. And that's because of white blood? Or is that because there is just scarcely a Negro of pure African blood who you term as black or African American, but properly American Indian? Yeah, ain't too many of us with no pure African blood. Most of them came in the 90s. Up until now, up until today. As he puts it, hard to find full bloods. Let's get into it, right? Even now, they, the Negro, are no longer Negroes. Whoa! 1/3 have a large infusion of white blood. 1/3 have less, but still some. And of the other third, it would be difficult to find an assured specimen. You're a specimen of pure African blood. I told you always under a microscope. Anyone who knows the Negro type will recognize the truth of this statement and will recognize the folly of classifying by color. An average Negro family with any considerable portion of white blood in it will show children from light yellow to almost black. So any variations of the complexions of the people in your family is due to having white blood. Well, I'm here to let the author of this article know you're wrong. Okay? That's not true. No white blood, no white human beings on the planet. Who are you speaking of when you say white? Who? Where they come from? Russia? Siberia? Who are you speaking of? England? Nah, you can't be speaking of them. Tell me, where is the land of the whites? Where's the land of the indigenous whites? And the atavistic principle is strong in such mixtures and is one of the crowning arguments against the racial intermarriage. From the marriage of a white man with a woman of only 1/16 Negro and showing herself none of the characteristics of the Negro race, is often born a child white in color but decidedly African in feature. So now, features. There are certain features that are labeled Africans. Well, how about this? Africa is the place that they term Africa. Let's speak about that. I don't want to talk about whether it's a continent, the fact that it's Afro, Europe, Asia, all one landmass. I don't want to go into that. But let's go to the place that is termed Africa. The place that they say is comprised of 50 plus countries with a bunch of people who look different. And all these people, a lot of them have different features. Some have small button noses. Some have wide, full noses. Some have thin lips. Some have full lips. Some have round faces. Some may have long faces. Some are tall. Some are short. Some are thick. Some are thin. Since slavery, and especially since the adoption in Louisiana of the policy of segregating the races, thus putting a stop to any further intermingling of blood, and other marked changes has taken place in the Negro in Louisiana, both rapid and surprising. Intermixture between the races has been almost entirely cut off. The Negro race is receiving no more Indian or white blood, and as no distinction is drawn among the Negroes between white Negro and black Negro. It was drawn in slavery days when the now we got cream-colored octoroon spurned the leather-colored quadroon, and the latter took it out on the yellow or dark molasses tinted griff. Intermarriage. Whoa, man. I mean, the colors, the complexions, this shit like 31 flavors. This shit like Baskin Robbins ice cream or some shit like that. Did you hear that? Did y'all hear that? Wow. I feel honored almost to get called these type of flavors. Check it out. The Negroes between white Negro and black Negro, it was drawn in slavery days when the cream-colored octoroon spurned the leather-colored quadroon, and the leather-colored octoroon, or the letter, let's do it over. When the cream-colored octoroon spurned the leather-colored quadroon, and the leather-colored quadroon took it out on the yellow or dark molasses tinted griff or griff. Intermarriage is rapidly reducing the race to a homogeneous one. Probably 5'6", now it's 5'6" Negro and 1'6" white with a dash, just a dash of Indian. The octoroons are almost gone. A few escape distinguished into the ranks of the whites, occasionally to be exposed and driven back. The others sink down and into the mass of the Negro race. But the striking feature of this change is that the new Negro, the composite or homogeneous Negroid, first we heard a Negroid, is very dark, probably darker than the antebellum Negro. Wow. Or even the original conditions of the conditions of years ago, but is struck by the fact of many years ago, but is struck by the fact that the average Negro of Louisiana of today, and especially of New Orleans, is much darker than of old. It is a dark, velvety black rather than the blackish yellow of the original Congo African. It is much too black for the proportion of white and Indian blood in their veins of the typical Negro of today. On the other hand, although blacker, the features are less pronouncedly African. The hair less woolly. Listen to this. It is a dark, velvety black rather than the blackish yellow. Have you ever seen blackish yellow? Come on, man. Listen. Are y'all dumber? Are y'all getting dumber too? I'm getting dumber. Dumber by the minute, man. And more confused by the minute too. Shout out to the commenter that said I was confused in the comments of one of my more recent videos. He or she is absolutely correct. I'm confused and I'm Many have wavy hair. How much of this improvement is due to better conditions, to better living? Because the hair wavy because of better living. You understand me? My hair ain't wavy. My hair like cotton candy. So I didn't have better living. I had horrible living because my hair like cotton candy. Is due to better conditions, to better living. And how much to racial intermixture it is, of course, impossible to say. The wavy hair is frequent instead of wool, which the Negroes abhor as a racial badge. They abhor as a racial badge. Thus, there is a blacker race, more distinctly African in color, but infinitely less so of feature. A black American, as it were. Now you're a black American. You've made it to black American. Same thing a lot of people call themselves today. See how they play with you? The explanation probably lies in the fact that the black type of Negro is more virile and increase more rapidly than the yellow or mixed types. And is therefore swallowing them up. So what are we talking about here? Swallowing them up? What? Virile? Swallowing them up? Quadroons and mulattoes as a whole are weak. What? More prone to disease and have small families. Formerly, these people who were mainly free looked with contempt on the blacks, but the sentiment has been destroyed by experiences of the last 40 years. The Negro race is not self-supporting. In New Orleans, there the Negro death exceed the births, and the deficiency is made good by the drift of the blacker Negroes from the country districts. Thus, with a continuous supply of black blood flowing in, a continuous supply of black blood. What kind of blood is black blood? The kind that when you get a cut and it just dry up on your skin and it turn black? I'm not sure. I don't understand. The amalgamation become more complete. This does not, however, fully explain the tendency of the Negro to grow weaker, which is due rather to the fact that the black tribes of Africa, mommy Africa, were of stronger and more virile type, and there is a natural tendency to revert to that original type. Do we see that type there? The same tendency is shown in several of the West Indian islands. See, they don't have no problem calling the islands Indian. They have no problem with that. The same tendency is shown in several of the West Indian islands. Shout out to the islands, the West Indian islands. Americans, the only Americans there ever was, is, and will be, where the original Indian inhabitants have been swallowed up by the Negroes. The Negroes are the original Indian inhabitants. No such thing as a Negro, so they're the original Indian inhabitants who you are falsely terming as Negroes, as you have with where we're from and calling us Negroes and properly red bones and all that, as well as a considerable white population, with apparently no effect on the color of the Negroes. In St. Kitts, to which thousands of Irishmen were sent as prisoners during William of Orange's campaign in Ireland, there is little apparent trace of Irish blood to be found among the inhabitants. But the Negroes of the island speak with marked Irish brogue, all that survives of the prisoners. Okay. Richmond Times Dispatch, Richmond, Virginia, Wednesday, December 10th, 1924. 1924, the year of the Racial Integrity Act by Plecker, Walter Plecker, 1924. When things were written on paper, when you were falsely labeled on paper. Pretty sure you was falsely labeled before 1924. Of course, all of our people were. All you got to do is look at the census records. But this Vital Statistics Office, Richmond Times Dispatch, Richmond, Virginia, Wednesday, December 10th, 1924. Anglo-Saxon Club may take appeal in Sorrell's case. Anglo-Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons, better known as Caucasians, better known as whites, and a bunch of other things. But I tend to say Anglo-Saxon because there's no human to color white, so it feels dumb to keep saying white and black. So I say Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon Club. They call themselves Anglo-Saxons. Look. Anglo-Saxon Club, 1924, may take appeal in Sorrell's case. Appoints committee to confer on racial integrity decision. Plecker quotes Vital Statistics. Real Negro gives no trouble, he says. Mongrels seek equality. With 500 members in attendance, post number 1, Anglo-Saxon Clubs of America voted unanimously last night to confer with attorney Oscar L. Shoemake, formerly of the State Corporation Commission, as to the feasibility of taking an appeal from the decision of Judge Holt of Rockingham County in the Atha Sorrell's racial integrity case. Harvey DeJarnette Coghill, who was presiding, named the following committee to confer with Mr. Shoemake: Dr. W.A. Plecker, Walter A. Plecker, John Powell, Norman L. Johnson, and Dr. Lawrence T. Price. This committee will report to the next meeting of the Post. The business session followed a banquet and musical entertainment in the Red Room of the Hotel Richmond. There was an opening number by Mr. Powell, a piano selection, 3 vocal numbers by George Harris, accompanied on piano by Mr. Powell, a vocal number, Kentucky Hill Song, by Miss Patty Johnson, a vocal selection by Miss Lawrence T. Price, accompanied by Mr. Harris, and a finale, Turkey in the Straw, played by Mr. Powell. Plecker quotes scriptures. Dr. W.A. Walter A. Plecker, State Register of Vital Statistics, discussing the movement for the preservation of racial integrity, said he was impelled to his live interest in the movement by the scriptural warning given in the 1st chapter, 9th verse of the book of Ezra, against the evils of miscegenation. 3 of the tribes referred to, he said, were descended from Ham, miscegenation. Quoting from the last chapter of the book, he said, all of these had taken strange wives, and some of them by these wives had children. Dr. Plecker said he was not opposed to the brotherhood between the races of the earth. as referred to in its scriptural sense. He told his audience some interesting facts concerning the conflicts his office as register is having with various colonies in the state, described by him as mongrel. William A. Plecker says, the real Negro is giving us no trouble. And by real Negro, there is no such thing as a Negro. So how can it be real? So they've been referring to the American Indians as Negroes. So the American Indian is giving us no trouble, he said. The near whites, the mongrels, the near whites, the mongrels, and the would-be whites are the troublemakers. There are about 10,000 of these in Virginia who might step over the line with little difficulty. But for the racial purity restrictions, you hear that? There are about 10,000 of these in Virginia who might step over the line with little difficulty. But for the racial purity restrictions, difficult to contend with. He said the colonies in Rockbridge and Amherst counties were the most formidable to contend with. We have information in our office showing that these people are a mongrel race of black and white with a strain of Indian blood, said the speaker. But to go into court and prove it is a difficult matter. Nevertheless, their mongrel character is traditional and historical in those counties. The Rockbridge County colony, he said, is more advanced in its fight to establish itself as white. He said that some of the mixed breed came from Buckingham and Essex counties and were descendants of Negro slaves. He referred to 3 Indians who had camped many years ago in Amherst, contracted smallpox and died. Their children remained and intermarried. These mongrel colonies, he said, are the most immoral in Virginia. Referring to the cases that have been contested in court, Dr. Plecker said that witnesses were intimidated and refused to answer in open court as they had when examined. Okay. Anglo-Saxon. We were just speaking of the Anglo-Saxon clubs of America and some quotes by Walter Plecker, the director of the Vital Statistics Office in Virginia. Wrote it in stone that you ain't an American Indian, that you ain't an Indian, that you are colored or a black or a Negro. Anglo-Saxon, literally English Saxon. Anglo, England, literally English Saxons. Saxon, member of a people or tribe formerly living in northern Germania, who invaded and settled in Britain 5C through 6C, 5th century through 6th century. This is traditionally regarded as meaning warrior with knives. Accordingly, they all met at the time and place appointed and began to treat of peace. And when a fit opportunity offered for executing his villainy, Hengist cried out, Nemet or Saxus, and the same instant seized Vortigern and held him by his cloak. The Saxons, upon the signal given, drew their daggers, and falling upon the princes, who little suspected any such design, assassinated them to the number of 460 barons and consuls. Bede distinguished the Anglo-Saxons who conquered much of southern Britain from the Edessacs, Old Saxons who stayed in Germany. Saxon is the source of the sex in Essex, Sussex, etc. Saxon is the source of the sex in Essex, Sussex, etc. Anglo-American, English person who has settled in North America. Originally often in contrast to German immigrants, later 1830s, in contrast to French Canadians, Louisiana French, Spanish Mexicans, as an adjective from 1797 pertaining to the English who have settled in America. So Anglo American pertaining to the English who have settled in America. Anglo American English speaking white person, 1941, southwestern US. Anglo American English speaking white person, 1941, southwestern US. Nightmare, circa 1300, an evil female spirit afflicting men or horses in their sleep with a feeling of suffocation. Mid 16th century, from the incubus to the suffocating sensation it causes. Sense of any bad dream is recorded in 1829. In the Anglo-Saxon superstitions, the echo was supposed to be a spirit which dwelt in the wilds and mocked people who passed there, as the nightmare tormented people in bed. 1884. This is from Edom Online. Okay, we're going to go back. Just a quick recap. Anglo American English speaking white person. Okay. Edom Online, etymology online, etymology of words. White, thing, creature. Also, unnatural or uncanny creature. A thing, a demon, a little child. Thing, creature, demon, creature, little child. Spirit of the earth, gnome. Do the right thing.